Well, hey there, HVAC pros and enthusiasts. Are you ready to take your skills to the next level? The HVACR Learning Network has just launched an exciting new e-learning course, High Performance Heat Pumps. And guess what? We're giving you free access to the first 2 chapters. Whether you're in the field, training for that next step, or simply want to sharpen your expertise, this course is packed with everything you need to understand and master high-performance heat pump systems, especially inverter-driven cold climate heat pumps. And the best part? You can access it anytime, anywhere, right from your favorite mobile device. It's HVACR learning made flexible and convenient for you. So what are you waiting for? Click the link. Dive into the HVACR Learning Network and start your free trial today. Your journey to HVACR mastery begins here.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us once again on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. So welcome, everyone, to the A2L heat pump install party. Woo! So we're joining you live from Barkersville, Indiana. And so I encourage all of you to let us know where you're joining from. Hop over in the chat and let us know. We're going to spend some time diving into this project that we're doing today. So we're actually doing a complete A2L 2-stage heat pump, 2-stage high-efficiency gas furnace installation, and we're going to be bringing all of that to you in the very near future in a bunch of videos so we can recap all of the best practices related to the installation for an A2L system. So we have a lot of partners hanging out on this project, and this is actually probably only half of all of us that were here yesterday. So we're spending time. Hey, Tony Gonzalez checking in from, Barkersville, Indiana.
Wait, what?
We got Tom Tebby, New Orleans, Louisiana. Mr. Tebby, thank you for joining us, sir. Kendrick, hey, I know, man. Kendrick, we got to get together sometime. You're always on here. I'd love to hang out sometime. I appreciate you joining us. Hey, Josh, thanks for joining us from North Texas. So we're going to be hanging out with Johnson Controls, Copeland, Fieldpiece, as well as Godfrey. Hey, Tony, that's right. You know what? That's another one, Tony. You and I, we got to get together soon, man. That's just all there is to it. Tom Grunster, thanks for joining us up in upstate New York. Okay, so we spend so much time talking to you about the heat pump adoption that is happening right now and how heat pumps can benefit you. And let us know how the audio is. We know we're outside. We actually can't hear what we sound like. We did a test earlier with Tom right there with us, actually, and it sounded like it wasn't too bad. We're going to pass it around. We're going to talk about different ways that heat pumps are now really becoming mainstream and in a variety of applications. This particular application really fits the bill, checks all those boxes. This is a less than 1,500 square foot home built in the 1970s, has a 100 amp electrical service panel. It has a 100 amp service from the electric utility. Oh, good. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate that. Mark, thanks joining in from Eastern Pennsylvania. So when we look at heat pump upgrades, we were going from a single stage furnace and a single stage air conditioner into this 2-stage heat pump and 2-stage gas furnace. And what we ended up finding was 2 very important things. One, the AC was oversized for the structure. So we're going to show you in a later video how we'll use Conduit Tech to do a full LiDAR scan load calculation for the structure. And we were able to reduce the capacity of the system. Had a 2.5 ton air conditioner, really only needed a 2 ton. So now we can control our airflow a little bit better. And when we look at the energy use of some of these new systems, we actually reduced the load on the electrical panel by keeping that gas application. Because think about that. If we were to go to a heat pump that could provide a majority of our heat, we know that if we go with an electric furnace, we're going to do what? We're going to have to upgrade the electrical panel. We're going to have to size the electric resistive heating for the full load capacity of the home. And that's generally a lot of upgrading. So in this application, not only were we able to add that heat pump, we were able to get into 2-stage in the heat pump, 2-stage in the gas furnace, and reduce our load on the electrical panel. So it is a win for everyone. Now, when we start talking about this A2L installation, we spent a lot of time showing you the chemistry behind refrigerants. We've showed you how a mitigation strategy should work, right? We've done some demonstrations just on training boards to show you what the refrigerant detection sensor looks like, what the mitigation control board looks like, how it's going to interrupt the control from the system thermostat over to the indoor unit so that we can have that additional safety control. So if in the event that we had a significant leak of A2L refrigerant, we could simply use the refrigerant detection sensor, put in a mitigation, shut the system down, turn the blower on, right? Same kind of mitigation we use, say, for the actual firing of a gas furnace, right? That's all we're really doing. We're controlling the potential for combustion by reducing the fuel and increasing our flow. So we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about what has changed in the equipment, what has changed with the compressors, what has changed with the tools. And let's start out. Tony, if you mind passing that mic up, let's start with Chris Forth here. Right. So, Chris, when we talk about the transitions in equipment, what do we see from your product line for changes from A1 systems into A2Ls?
Well, yeah. So the bigger, some of the things you've already mentioned, right? Like the refrigerant detection systems.
Yeah.
Those are probably the most notable thing. You'll see other things like the red caps
Yeah.
and some of the red, the notice stickers, right?
Sure.
But I think the thing that's important to point out is a lot of the things are the same.
Yeah, I mean, look at that
Right.
beautiful unit sitting over there. It's not like it's a big red something sitting down here
Right.
going, oh, there's a dangerous product.
Right.
It's a gorgeous piece of equipment that really looks like what we're used to seeing.
And behaves a lot like we're used to seeing, right? Some of the
Exactly.
refrigerants we're going to very similar pressures and temperatures to 410A. The technicians, your
Yeah.
customers are going to be aware of those. So a lot of the same operating, sequences and so forth. The main difference being that RDS, that refrigerant detection system, and how that functions when there's a leak detected.
Exactly. So when we look at the outdoor unit, I'll have some photos and videos we'll be sharing later. Hey, thanks for joining us, Murph. I'll have some photos and videos to share with you. We are going to see new decals. Jason and I talked about that a lot. We're going to see some stickers that's going to say, hey, this is different than what you've seen before. We're going to put some red indicators and red caps on the service fitting so that you can tell that there's something different about this versus the previous unit. But from the outside, we really don't look any different at all. Now, when we move indoors, we're going to start noticing those things like the mitigation control board. We'll have some more stickers. We'll have things like that. Howard, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being there in Denver. Howard, you'd had so much fun. We've actually been, I can't believe we're getting paid to do this, guys. We've had a really good time catching up on these changes in technologies and innovations. And it's so heartwarming as a technician to be able to have an installation and have so many manufacturers represented that are all here to do one thing. They're here to support you, to make sure that you have firsthand information. Oscar, thank you for joining us from Georgia. So if you have any questions along the way about how things could look different, how things are similar, anything along the way, just let us know in the chat. We'd love to be able to address some of those with you. Tony, you're going to get an invitation. I'll tell you what, I'm going to get with Allison. She's right over here, and you and I are going to do something together. I about guarantee that. It's inevitable. So let's move on. We just talked about mitigation. Let's head on over Warren. Warren, you want to tell us a little bit about how does a mitigation strategy work?
Well, it comes down to it has to follow the UL code.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for us, we have a sensor on the delta plate on the front of the evap
Yeah,
coil.
on that inspection plate that a lot of people would normally see on an evaporator.
Yeah,
okay.
Behind a full case coil.
Yeah.
Or full case coil, and even with the loose ones.
Yep.
And the sensor is in a position that engineering has tested, and that's the greatest concentration of the refrigerant when it leaks out.
Okay.
Goes to the mitigation control board,
which is for right now is a separate control board. I hear potentially could be integrated into some of the OEM boards in the furnace or air handler down the road, but it's at least right now we're all going to see a separate board.
Yeah. No, for this install, it's on the front of the case coil door.
Very clear. I mean, it's right in front of you.
Yeah. That was on purpose, that design, when we went through with it. And the sensor plugs into it. And so if your sensor detects 15% LFL, it's going to go into mitigation control mode, shut off the outputs, heating, cooling, and bring the indoor fan on.
Right. So it's just an extra little safety feature. when we look at the flammabilities of refrigerants, they're kind of disappointing, to be honest.
Yeah, no big boom.
There's no big booms. We're just adding that additional safety feature. And so
Correct.
as a installer and as a technician, as an educator, when we start looking at what does it take to work on and install an A2L system, it's very minimal, actually. This was my first A2L installation.
Yeah.
And for me, it really wasn't a learning curve. I had some general education just from the show and from working with all of my wonderful manufacturers. But to actually put my hands on it was a very different experience. And we have so much content we're going to be able to share with you. We're probably going to put it into a whole e-learning course so that you can get comfortable with where this is. Yeah, Fieldpiece, I know, isn't he back? Look at this guy. He has been so helpful. What do you see some of the pictures of us when we were tearing this thing out? Boy, we really got dirty on this one. So if you've never seen Tony getting dirty, Tony was getting dirty with me, boy. We had some issues. Like all installs, you're going to have some things that you encounter, and we did. This is an older home. It actually had an R22 system from 1997. So when we pulled the evaporator out, we found that the bottom of the condensate pan had rotted out like they commonly do, and the entire plenum was a nasty, rusty mess. So we had to yank it out and go back to our normal installation. But once we got back to the equipment, it was just work as normal. So let's move around here, and I'll tell you what, let's pass it all the way back to Lenny here. We're gonna spend some time with Copeland. So one of the questions we get very often, hey George, thanks for joining us in Western Kentucky. One of the questions we often get is, when we went from an A1 refrigerant into an A2L refrigerant, what happened with the compressors? Did they look any different? And are there any changes to service procedures if I happen to work on one of these in the future? Lenny, can you fill us in on some of that?
Absolutely. So when we redesigned the compressors for the A2Ls, the same size compressor, the same shell, the frame,
same physical size,
is going to be the same. Looking at it from the outside,
you're
not going to notice any difference. The one indication on the outside that's going to let you know is our numbering of our model numbers have changed.
Okay.
So off the bat, our traditional legacy compressors that had, 410A or R22 in there started with the Z.
Yeah.
So now that we have mildly flammable A2Ls out there, we've changed our numbering system to start with a Y.
Okay.
So right off the bat, that's going to be your indication that you're working with an A2L compressor. So, but internally, they have been optimized for an A2L refrigerant. Every one of our AC compressors is going to be designed for one specific refrigerant, so there's no backwards compatibility there.
Yes, absolutely.
And you cannot switch out for any other refrigerant. If it's called out to be a 454B, it's only a 454B. No other refrigerant can be added to that system at that point, because it has been optimized to make sure that we're hitting those UL ratings, the capacity that it should be, and allowing the system to run properly.
That is a really good point. I hadn't even thought about the whole UL side. It goes really deep because one of the things that we have seen in social media, and it's part of the reason we want to have these conversations with firsthand educators, is to break some of those myths that are very incorrect in the industry. We've heard of technicians that will use alternative refrigerants. They'll have a A2L system, decide they want to put a A1 refrigerant back into that thing. If we think about it, all the way from the UL to your AHRI rating, to your manufacturer's warranties, everything is null and void because it was never designed and never tested and will never be certified for that. But when we get to the whole UL side of it, boy, now we're really getting into safety violations. And so as a technician, if you take on that responsibility yourself, you now own the responsibility of that system if there was any potential failures, not just from the gases, but from the mechanical failures of that. It's something that might be a whole separate show in itself. But I was very surprised. Yeah, the compressor itself really looked just like we're normally going to see in the compressors, except for that model.
Yeah, everything's been optimized so it can sound the same, look the same. And the only other thing that's going to be different is when you're servicing it, you want to make sure that you are cutting out the compressor rather than unsweating it. Something that would have been a best practice before is now a standard practice. That way, if there's any type of refrigerant that's residual inside there, you're not putting yourself in any type of harm.
Okay, very good. Yeah, that's a fantastic thing to think about. If we even looking at best practices for our A1 refrigerants, it is just such a great idea to cut compressors out versus brazing. Because if you think about that, especially if it's been if it's cooler outside than it is indoors, we have that potential for refrigerant settling in the oil of the outdoor unit. And if we start heating that thing up, we're going to disturb any of that refrigerant that could have potentially been left in that oil. Any contaminants that would have been in the system were already starting to warm up. So something that should have always been best practice is now going to be required. Robert had a question here. Are you expecting to develop a compressor that will allow other refrigerants in the future? I guess I'm not 100% sure on that, Robert, because really all compressors are designed specifically for the refrigerant itself. So they're matched together as we're building that compressor envelope so that the compressor itself is operating in a specific range. Not sure if there's something that I need to dig deeper in that. If he
might be talking about
dual rating potentially, maybe
supermarkets.
Yeah, let's
on the refrigeration side, you can see things where they're going to be backwards compatible. But
right
on AC right now, we haven't gotten to a point where we've gotten there.
Oh, okay.
Not saying that we might not ever get there, but right now it's just certainly not the application.
Forward only, not backwards compatible. Okay, I hope that answered your question, Robert. If it didn't, definitely put some more in there. Hey, Vito, thanks for joining us from East PA. All right, so we talked a little bit about how there are things now that really have always been best practices that are now required. Let's hand on over to Tony and let's talk about this. There's a couple things we're going to talk to Tony about. So Tony, as you and I were going through this installation, we were skimming through installation manuals as all technicians should do when they're looking with a piece of equipment. Hey, Ranger, I'm glad you joined us, man. Haven't seen you in a little while. Yeah, this is the A team. I am so proud to be on this team. You're right. So, Tony, let's think about some things that should have been the best practices with our A1s that now basically are required due to codes and regulations for our A2L systems.
Yeah, so on first note, it's amazing how much information an installation manual has.
It is.
When you actually crack it open and you read what's in there.
You mean it's all there?
It's all there, right? Who would have thunk it?
Who would have thought?
Right? That thing we use as knee pads actually has the answers to 99% of all of our questions. So that's great.
Yeah.
But as far as best practices that were always recommended with an A1 system, but are now required for an A2L system, well, on the install side, first we have something like pressure testing with nitrogen.
Yeah.
And it's very important to look at the installation manual, see what the requirements are from the OEM.
That manufacturer, because it may not be the same between manufacturers.
Yes, for sure. And then on the service side, it's always been best practice that after recovering refrigerant, before opening up the system to purge the line set with nitrogen, now with an A2L system, kind of what you were talking about, we should be purging the line set after recovering refrigerant before a repair to ensure that we're getting, as much of that residual refrigerant out of the system.
I agree. Absolutely. Hey. Oh, I'm struggling. Is it Sleven from Massachusetts tapping in? Glad to see you there. All right. So another thing we should probably talk about while we're here on the requirements, let's talk about tools. Let's talk about things that we should be looking at in our tool selection to make sure that we are prepared for A2Ls, whether we are a service technician in the field or we are an educator in the classroom that is preparing for an A2L equipment transition. Let's talk about the tools that we should be focusing on.
Yeah, so these new refrigerants, they're called A2L because that is their classification for mash rate, right? So they are of a different classification than an A1, like a 410A or an R22, and it's called mildly flammable. So as a result, we just need to ensure that the tools that we use are compatible with these newer refrigerants. So that's upon the tool manufacturers like Fieldpiece and like others to look at their tools, do their due diligence, and declare them as A2L compatible or non-A2L compatible. So from a contractor perspective, what you need to do is just ensure that the tools that your technicians are using are compatible with the new refrigerants. And you can go to fieldpiece.com or your tool manufacturer of choice's website to find out if that tool is A2L compatible.
Very good. One of the things that I have noticed too, especially with digital gauges, Sometimes it's as simple as a software update. So we highly encourage you to go through your inventory of tools, take a good look and assess everything that you have, and then head on over to fieldpiece.com and see what you have on that list to see if you're already there or if it's time to start investing in some new tools. We all need a good reason to invest in new tools, right? So here's the perfect opportunity. We have a new generation of refrigerants, and now I need to upgrade some things. Hey, Demetrius, thank you. I know this is so much fun, isn't it? We're going to have to do more of this because it lets us all know that we are one industry. When we see different manufacturers, we always wonder, are they all working together? Are they all working against each other? You can see right here, they're all actually working to make this industry as efficient as possible. And we all have obstacles. Even as technicians, we have obstacles adjusting to the A2L transition. As distributors, we have obstacles transitioning. As manufacturers, we have obstacles transitioning. As educators, we all have these same obstacles that we are overcoming together. Refrigerant transitions is not new to this industry, and it's not going to be the end of refrigerant transitions. We have to make sure that we are using the trusted sources for training, education, and support. Hey, thank you, Moses. Appreciate you being here with us. And really, if anyone has questions, hop in. We want to hear from you on this one. So where do we want to dive from here? Where do we want to run next? You guys got...
No, there's so many places. Yeah.
All right, Charles, let's
talk about training.
Let's do that since we just talked about training.
Let's talk about training.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so when we start talking about training, ESCO focuses a lot on A2L training, low GWP refrigerants, all the fundamentals and basics, but that's really like where we begin, understanding how refrigerants work and why they're different. But when it comes to the equipment, you need to be with the manufacturer to understand what has happened in these transitions for the equipment. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about training on new products.
Well, to be honest, I mean, since we put the system in, the general putting a split in or a heat pump system in, the soldering part's the easy part. A lot of stuff we already know, but where we ran into some issues, and the manual was really helpful, is going through the new wiring diagram of the mitigate board.
Yeah.
It was a little drawing for us.
Yeah.
It's not your normal system. So getting your actual technicians trained, making sure that you guys understand the systems, reading the manual the night before.
Yeah. Getting really comfortable with it.
Get comfortable with it because it's not as easy as it seems. So
yeah.
Once you do it a couple of times, I'm sure it's fine. So training is number one. You make sure you read the manual. I can't add any more than Tony already said.
And for our technicians and our instructors that are looking for this hands-on advanced training, tell me a little bit about the Ducted Systems Academy.
Ducted Systems Academy is located in Norman, Oklahoma. It's just up north of the factory where the rooftops are made, and south of Wichita from the residential units. We do all the training for certified trainers. We do startup and commissioning. We're starting to branch out into troubleshooting classes we're developing now, and we're actually going to start branching out into the business sales application training to make sure we're installing the proper units, the sizing and whatnot. So
very nice.
We're excited. We're going to basically relaunch. We opened up in 2019, but COVID hit and which kind of set everything on a different level. So we're going to basically reopen, grand opening this fall. So
John, you might mention it's all under roof from 2 to 100-ton rooftop, all under roof, live.
We've got a total of 15 rooftops, ranging from 3 to, well, the new one's coming in is going to be 80-ton rooftop.
Yeah.
45 feet long, 12 feet wide. It's a big son of a gun.
Yeah.
And it's all indoors. Our residential lab has got 16 residential labs, which are currently being all tore out, so we can put that all new 454B in. So rooftops are all being changed this summer, so we can be up to speed and make sure we're training the latest and greatest.
Fantastic. For those of you that are interested in getting a peek at the Ducted Systems Academy, the Ducted Systems Academy. If you go over to the YouTube channel after this, you want to take a look at that. We actually have a walkthrough video where we were invited to go down and take a look at the Ducted Systems Academy. And I'm telling you, there's so much going on there. You need to dive in and learn what's happening with Johnson Controls in education. So as educators, we're always looking for those places to get better at what we're doing. And that's a home for you. That is a place to get in, get your hands on equipment, and learn from the instructors firsthand. We're talking information firsthand. Well, how about sitting in with the instructors for the firsthand experiences in the lab, in the classroom? Boy, is that Mrs. Van Kuren that's joining us in here? Awesome, thank you. He's been such a good boy. We'll tell you, he's worked hard. We're wearing it. Let's move on over to him.
What's she say?
Beth Washington.
Yep. That would be. Hi, honey.
Please say hi. Hi.
He's been good.
He's been very good.
Chris would always cover for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we got the idea started for this project when we were at the ESCO
at
conference down in Vegas.
National HVACR Education Conference. Yes.
And that is, I go to a lot of conferences, and I absolutely love that conference. I look forward to that one every year. It's it's just such an amazing show, and I always learn so much stuff when I go to that. But it's like the same with like his Ducted Systems Academy.
That's right.
Every time I go down there, I pick up something new and something amazing. Or pretty much every time I'm near Chris Forth, I learn something new and something amazing. And this is an industry where you can never stop learning. You're just constant. You're going to pick something up. I've been doing this for years, and I learn something new every day. Either it's something I'm going after to look for, or if it's just standing here talking to Tony, he turned me on to all sorts of stuff with their JobLink app that it's way more amazing than all of us actually knew, and talking to the Fieldpiece guys, I picked up so much. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Copeland. Never mind. No, I mean, I learned a lot from talking to the Copeland crew that was here today.
Yes.
And you just can never stop learning in this industry. And honestly, reading the manual, like he was saying, will take you so much further. Well, you have to now. Most of the phone calls I get now are related to RDS. And
the refrigerant
detection and technical support.
Technical support phone calls that we get are related to the RDSs, and I'll start talking to these guys, and they're just, it's like, I can tell you have not read the manual.
Right.
And I'll ask them, have you read the manual? They'd be like, it didn't come with one. I'll email you one then. I don't have an email address. People will take great lengths to avoid reading this manual. And I don't understand why, because you get so much out of them.
You do.
And we read the manual. We know how to do it now. And if you read the manual, you will know how to do it as well.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to Tony for a minute, because that does bring up a point. All of us know Fieldpiece. We know the quality of the tools. There are some new things, especially like through JobLink, that not. Oh yeah, boy, there's a good one too. Tony, let's talk about the tools that were used for the installation and the commissioning for this unit. Let's talk about what we actually used here for this A2L system. What products did you bring with you?
Yeah, so what I brought were the products to basically complete the tasks. Once all line set has been joined and connected, to go through the proper procedures like a leak test, pressurizing with nitrogen, and then moving on to evacuating the system. So for those, we have the S-band digital manifold, we have the JobLink probes, we have the vacuum pumps, the micron gauge, things like that.
Yeah.
And then once you get to the point where you're releasing the charge and firing the system back up, then the measurement tools like the JobLink probes to verify system pressures, temperatures, delta T at the indoor coil. We didn't even get to static pressures for obvious reasons of what we still have to do here. But the idea is to not only perform the tasks of a pressure test, of a vacuum, of proper charge, weight, but have a way to verify and document that those things are done.
Documentation.
Correctly.
To specification.
Yeah. In terms of pain points, contractors, one of their pain points that they tell us is, knowing, are my guys in the field actually doing the things that we are training them to do?
You can't watch all of them.
can't watch all of them. And so having them being able to build out this job link report that'll show documented what their pressure test was pressure tested to, and if it held, right? What the vacuum was pulled to, where did it hold? How much additional charge was added to the system, and then pressures, temperatures, superheat, subcooling, delta T, static pressures, all those things can be documented into a PDF report and saved into a software like a Service Titan, or just sent to the customer, save for your own records.
There's validation.
And that's validation, and it greatly reduces the contractor's likelihood of having a callback.
Oh, yeah.
On that install. So
yeah,
just
very good point.
Using things like that to improve the industry, improve quality installs, and comfort of the homeowner.
Yeah, for sure. You want to bring it over? Yeah, let's bring them here. Take mine.
Oh, no, I was going to say, Tony, it's like guys in the field don't like doing paperwork. I came from the field. A lot of us came from the field, and who wants to do that paperwork in the truck? It's this software, and I was really impressed with it today, was that you can literally record everything, and it's all labeled, it's all laid out, and it's a simple little done. So it saves a lot of work for the technicians.
You bring up a great point. Let's hand it over to Chris. I have something actually we want to talk about that doesn't always get mentioned. Oh, that's a good point, Demetrius. So based on manufacturer recommendation, will the RDS need to be tested annually? Anyone have any input on that at all? That might be a good one. We'll come back to you here in just a second, Chris.
So yeah, so for our RDS, there is a test function.
Okay.
Pins that you can, once you install it, you want part of your startup commissioning, you want to ensure the mitigation control is going to work as needed. But test gas on the sensor for us, no.
Okay.
We're not doing that with our mitigation control system.
Yeah, something I had talked to a couple of different manufacturers about, but I've not verified with the RDS sensor manufacturer. Do they go through a self-test?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that, because that really would eliminate the need for doing a manual test annually.
Yeah, so there's our sensor is Modbus to the mitigation control board.
Okay.
So it's in constant communication.
It's powered all the time and communicating.
All the time. It's communicating back.
Okay.
So when it detects that refrigerant, through the Modbus communicates to the mitigation control board. But the sensor can also say, hey, I have failed.
Oh, sure.
To the mitigation control board through the self-test.
Yeah.
And then the mitigation control board will lock the system out, not to running, cooling, and heating.
Yeah.
It will go into fan-only mode to help, if it needs to do stuff that way. But yeah, there's no annual retest. There's fair lifespan on these sensors as long as they're contaminant free.
Right.
If you're bringing back bad return, oily return, industrial process, something like that, different story. But yeah, no, the sensors are very tough and do self-monitor.
Fantastic. Yeah, very good question. I'm glad you asked that. Oh, yeah, good question, Tom. On line set calculations. Yeah, so it goes back to all of our additional installation manuals. It's going to be based on the manufacturer. If there's going to be additional charge, it's going to be based on the line set. And that's another point to even talk about. With line sets, we get the question often, do we have to replace the line set on every installation? What would you think about that, Chris?
Well, I mean, per the codes and standards we talk about, there's also been updates that have come with the A2L. So in ASHRAE 15.2, right, again, this is one of those practices that have become mandatory now.
Yeah.
You can reuse existing line set,
but
you have to do a pressure decay test.
Exactly.
Right? So which is what the test we did here.
Sure.
On this setup, we reused in this application the existing line set.
Right.
We pressurized it up, watched the decay.
Yep.
For I think it was close to an hour.
It's
right?
quite a while.
We watched it to see if it would go down. As soon as we found that it was steady, right, we went ahead and pulled the vacuum, right, and then But yeah, you can reuse the line sets, but per ASHRAE 15.2, you got to follow that protocol.
Absolutely.
Right?
And so it's got to be a verified line set. It's got to be the correct size. And then if any additional refrigerant charge is going to be necessary for it, it's just based off from your line set sizing, which will be in the installation manual, which will be different from manufacturers. And you got to remember too, a lot of that's based on whether you're working with a ducted system or a ductless system. So there's a variety of things to calculate additional line set charge, but it's absolutely based on the installation manual.
Right.
Well, one of the questions that I was wanting to go to a while ago when we were talking about system verification is Wow, there's a train coming by. I hope that's not too loud for everyone.
So that is not the A2L alarm.
Yeah, no, that's not that. We're not in mitigation. Wow, he's close. We'll remember this one for a while. So we'll just keep the mics closer and I'll be able to cut out a lot of that.
Got it.
So when we talk about the quality of installation and the verification, it's not just for homeowners to know that they had a quality installation. There's a lot of potential rebates available on these high efficiency systems, not just the heat pump, but even in our gas furnaces. Can you tell us a little bit about how we have incentives available for heat pumps and gas furnaces?
Yeah, that's a good point. This system I'll put out that we're here today, right? We made sure it met multiple criteria.
Right.
So there are federal incentives, right, that we know. I think some people may think, hey, the 25C tax credits, there's some influx, I'll just say some flux at the federal level.
Right.
But we feel pretty good right now. And of course, the legislation is still in process.
You bet.
But they're working on that, right? But what you will find is if you look at the local utility level, right, some of the state rebates have their own, right? A lot of those will call out the same levels, right?
Sure.
In this case, right, our AHRI certified rating would qualify for both federal, state, and as you mentioned, on just the gas furnace alone, because this was a 97, right?
Yeah.
That's the Energy Star number, right? So Energy Star is still in one of those federal programs you got to watch.
Yeah.
But if that stands, right, there's a standalone rebate just for that by itself.
Wow.
So you can stack those
on top of each other
because they're different buckets of money.
Yeah,
right?
true.
So you got federal money, you got state money, and utility money. So it's very, region specific where that applies.
Okay, so definitely make sure that you're looking at your local options. I know here in central Indiana, it varies by county. It varies by your actual utility provider. So you want to make sure to check on that. But there is another misperception in the industry that I have to buy the most expensive piece of equipment to be able to get any type of rebate. And that's not true at all. So where we ended up here is a 16 SEER 2 two-stage heat pump with a 97% two-stage gas furnace. So when we look at product lineups and product offerings, if I'm a contractor, I typically have 2, 3, potentially 4 product lineups that I'm going to offer. This is a very realistic, high-performing upper mid tier, I would consider this, right? This is an average home. So this is we'll have a full report. We'll actually have a bunch of stats that we'll have for you down the road. We'll have some data analysis that we'll use for a case study. This is a first time home buyer in a under 1,500 square foot, built in the 70s, that didn't have a ton of updates. It had the original electrical panel
and downflow
and a counterflow system, right? So we're talking about a very common, at least Midwest home, right? On a crawl space. So there's a lot of opportunity for a very high performing system that meets the budget and potentially qualifies for a lot of incentives and rebates. So a lot going on. Dennis, thank you for joining us in Southern California. And quite a few people out here today. I'm so grateful to have all of you along. Other questions, hop in there. We still got some time. We got about another 20 minutes or so that we can help answer your questions and get you more resources. Actually, we should talk about resources. So we've talked about Ducted Systems Academy. Chris, what are some other resources that Johnson Controls offers, even for training or just for reference material?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a large amount of that, right? We've got our online tool, right? So we call it Solution Navigator. There's a marketing section within that,
right,
where contractors can private label their stuff, right? We have different levels of contractor programs. I'm not really the expert on
that.
No, but we got CC, Liberties Plus, and others dealer, and we have. Thank you, Charles. Charles, you want to show that again? We have our Ducted Solutions.
Yes.
App there. There you go. That, a lot of our equipment has the QR code that you can scan for that.
Very nice.
Way through that app, you can pull up the tech guide, you can register for warranty.
Sure.
Right. You can buy accessories, right? That's self-help, right? Video content that we've got through the academy.
Right.
So, I mean, just a whole plethora of resources available there through that app, right?
Amazing. Yep. Very good tool.
I mean, we were using it today ourselves, right? When we were looking at wiring diagrams. We pulled up a video, right? Our own video. How did these guys do this,
just to double check on things. Like, okay, we're pretty confident, but let's just double check. Are there resources? Well, yeah, there's all sorts of resources, even videos on those. So yeah, a lot more coming down the road. We've even got our mitigation calculator, so we can do RDS calculator, very important tool when we're looking at system mitigation. Catherine, thanks for joining us from Hillsboro, Missouri, and Blake out VIU. We really appreciate y'all hanging out with us today. Another thing we need to do, let's pass the mic on back down to Lenny, because I want to talk about some of our Copeland training sources, some of our Copeland apps where we can dive deeper into a variety of different training resources.
Absolutely. Biggest resource that you're going to have is going to be our Copeland mobile app.
Yeah.
In there, it's got 30 years worth of Copeland data in there. Any of our technical bulletins, application engineering bulletins, and product data is going to be in there. And then we recently released a AI scout function where it's going to actually, if you type in a question in there, it's going to go through and search all those 30 years worth of data and find out the information that you're looking for specifically.
Right.
And it'll provide the answer, but it'll also link the bulletin that it pulled the information from.
We don't have to manually search for it anymore?
Correct.
Wow, right.
So if you're on a job site and you need a quick answer, that's going to be your quickest way. It's going to actually beat calling into the wholesaler and trying to find information out that way, or going through all the different product catalogs. So we're doing a lot there. There's also a training section on the Copeland mobile app. And then our brothers over at the White Rogers, they have the White Rogers Connect. We did install a Sensi thermostat here.
Yes.
So any type of questions that would come up on that, the White Rogers Connect would be where you'd go there. Both the Sensi and the Copeland side of things, we do have an e-learning site also. So if you go to copeland.com and go to the learning section on there, there's going to be classes that you can take online for both the compressors, the refrigeration cycle, and on all the controls.
Very cool. Yeah, I used to go through the bulletin, so I'm a document nerd. I'm okay reading books, but I love reading technical manuals. I know it's a strange hobby to have, but I used to dive into Copeland technical bulletins all the time just because I was working on so many different styles of compressors. So to be able to find those quickly, that's really going to be a nice add-on feature. I like that a lot.
You might mention thermostat.
Yeah, so we installed the Sensi thermostat. So we're going to have some additional videos, complete installation videos as well, even on the Sensi and the app that goes along with that, so we can detail how to dive deeper into into all of the technical information we have available. Lou, thanks for joining us. Glad you're hanging out with us today. Come on, I know you guys got some more questions out there. We got about 15 more minutes left. Anyone have anything that they would like to point out, like to add into this A2L conversation today that we haven't addressed? It's a lot. We're all wearing down. This is like the third day, by the way. This is not just a day. Yeah. Vito, I know the Copeland mat is great. Yeah. So any technician, any educator, you need to hop in that Copeland app and make sure you're putting it to use. So we started on Tuesday doing a system tear out. Yesterday, we spent the entire day doing installation and technical videos along the way, as well as product promotional videos and photos. So we're going to have so much information. If you're looking for content on any of these specific items, especially our RDS control board sensors, everything that would be needed in the classroom, or working with your own technicians as a contractor to help make sure that you've got those resources so you can be prepared before you get that piece of equipment. Because if you're not already installing A2L systems, they're right around the corner. So they are here. Hey, Matt, thanks for joining us in Ontario. Yeah, any information coming up on that Sensi product? Yes. I will get in the show notes. It won't be on this live version. We always come back and do a kind of a cleaned up, finished, edited video at the end, and then we'll post that back on YouTube as well as on the HVACR Learning Network. It's actually available on the Learning Network as a CEU with an assessment if you're ever interested in that. Is the beer hiding under the table? Eugene says from Florida. Well, it is a party, isn't it? But we're a professional party at the minute. Yeah, freeze temp. We're great to have you here. Yeah, it is a good afternoon. We spend so much time just learning about new products and new technologies, I think I just felt a raindrop. Ray, has there been a decay test done on what happens if you don't do one on an A2L system? I'm sure there's been tons of testing and validation. Remember, it all comes down to making sure that we have a line set that is as close as a new line set as possible. So if the line set is the correct size, we're going to be doing that decay test just to validate that it is a completely sealed system. We never know if there is a union, a joint, a leak someplace along the line that hasn't been detected in a long time. So we're really using that for validation that it is a solid sealed system. Matt, you're very welcome. We're grateful for you guys joining here. We really look forward to you hanging out with us more often. We do this every Thursday at 4:30 Eastern. We bring in different technical trainers from the industry to make sure you are getting firsthand information. There's a lot of poor and misleading information in our industry and social media. We want to make sure that you have everything right, everything correct from the manufacturers themselves. Question. Okay, from Slevin. Does it matter analog or digital for R454B gauges? Any recommendations along the way? Let's hand that down to Tony.
I mean, technically, it doesn't matter. You just really want to make sure that if it's on the digital side, it's A2L compatible. But for either digital or analog, as long as they have the charts for the A2Ls or for the A1s, so you can do your super subcooling. I mean, there really is not a recommendation one versus the other. They can both be used.
Yeah. Good call. Yeah.
Has anybody seen an analog R454 gauge?
I have not seen an analog A2L, but you have seen analog A2L. It really comes back to, in classrooms, many times we prefer to teach on an analog gauge so that we can show the methodology and the math to calculating superheat and subcooling. I always think of it like tools. There was a time where, as a whole industry, we looked at calculators the same way. Is this a tool? Is it a crutch? And today we don't even think twice about it. We use the things that make us more successful. We need to understand the fundamentals. Absolutely. Can we do it faster and be more accurate? We absolutely can. We can actually show you the tolerances difference between. We actually do that in the high performance heat pump curriculum, whether you're taking the e-learning course, the book, or the PowerPoint. We'll show the differences. I think that's actually a Fieldpiece PowerPoint that we used for that one. I'm pretty sure it was. We showed the tolerance differences between mechanical dial style gauges and a couple different digital probes to be able to show how we've came along the way where our modern digital tools are so much more accurate. Remember, many of these systems are very accurately charged, right? They're critically charged. So we want to make sure that we're using the most accurate tools available. If that mechanical gauge is very accurate, then you're going to be calculating. Will you get it as close as a digital gauge? Personally, would say probably not. I haven't seen enough data to validate that, but on a personal level, I would
say you might mention that some of our newer systems, particularly the higher efficient ones, efficiency products, that charge accuracy really makes a difference, right? The system will run.
Right, but it's going to run
optimal, right? So a few ounces of charge on some of these systems, especially with the microchannel coils and the smaller diameter, tubing,
right?
Particularly from the heat pumps and stuff.
Yeah.
A few ounces off, you can really tell the difference.
Make a difference.
So getting the accuracy with the newer tools,
yeah,
right, the gauges and so forth, weighing in the refrigerant more accurately, right?
Yeah.
Some of the scales I think we've all seen in the field. Yeah, let's just say you wouldn't want to, bet your profitability on them, right? So I think getting those very accurate is super critical. So.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
right.
The old mechanical dials that we grabbed out of the bathroom, they don't work. Oh wow, still so many questions coming in. This is fantastic. Ray, you know what? That is one that I wish as an industry we would step up and ask for a requirement from the contractors. In many of our water side applications, particularly like in boilers, we have a required commissioning report for those new installations to validate for warranty. As an industry, it's never really gotten to that point, but I highly encourage that as an educator or as a contractor to teach that to your students, that it should be required internally, even if it's not required at a industry level. Another one from Slevin. Will there ever be a need for a second sensor? If you're talking about A2L sensor,
yeah, not so much residential, but I know, right, commercially,
larger commercial applications potentially.
You will, in factory, some of our factory machines have several A2L. So
based on locations.
Yeah, like what Warren mentioned earlier about when we do the safety agency listing, that location is certified by the safety agency.
Right.
For the larger rooftops and some of those splits, we have agency said you can't get by with one. You have to have multiple. So those will come from the factory with up to 7.
Okay.
In the larger equipment. So the 80-ton he's about to get in the Ducted Systems Academy.
Yeah.
Will have 7.
Multiple.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Very good question. I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, Vito want to get some more information. They're a fantastic crew, I'm telling you. Yeah, I really appreciate all of you. Marion, thanks for joining in from West Virginia. You know, we're starting to see a lot of these A2L systems. We just want to make sure that you're prepared. I think we're going to go ahead and cut things a few minutes short. We're starting to get some raindrops. I don't mind them. They actually feel pretty good, but we got a lot of computer electronics, sitting out here that don't like it quite as much. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining in. I'll put some links into the show notes to get access to all of our different manufacturers that's working with us today. We thank you for joining us. I encourage you to come back, check out on the YouTube channel, share this with your friends, hit that like and subscribe. I'm going through a promotional period right now where I'm trying to really promote our YouTube channel heavy because we have so much quality information out there for free for you. So make sure to do that, pass it around, and we're going to call it a wrap. And we thank you all for joining us this week on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.